Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 4, Chapter 20, which is titled Lord Vishnu's Appearance at the Sacrificial Arena, text number 20. So 4:20:20. The previous verse, text 19, Prithu has received the Lord. King Prithu abundantly worshipped the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was so merciful to him. While worshipping the lotus feet of Lord, Prithu Maharaj gradually increased his ecstasy in devotional service. Text 20. The Lord was just about to leave, but because he was so greatly inclined toward the behavior of King Prithu, he did not depart. Seeing the behavior of Maharaj Prithu with his, that's Lord Vishnu's, lotus eyes, he was detained because he is always the well-wisher of his devotees. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Here, the words Suhrit, Satam are very significant. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always very inclined toward his devotees and is always thinking of the devotees' well-being. This is not partiality. As it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord is equal to everyone, samoham sarvabhuteshu, but to one who particularly engages in his service, he is very much inclined. In another place, the Lord says that a devotee always exists in his heart, in Krishna's heart. The devotee always exists in the Supreme Lord's heart. Where does he say that? Lord Vishnu says this to Durvasa Muni. Right? He also exists always in the heart of the devotee. Paragraph. The special inclination of the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his pure devotee is not unnatural, nor is it partiality. For example, sometimes a father has several children, but he has special affection for one child who is very much inclined toward him. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita 10:10. Tesam satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami bodhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. Those who constantly engage in the devotional service of the Lord in love and affection are directly in contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sitting as the Supersoul in everyone's heart. The Lord is not far away from the devotee. He is always in everyone's heart, but only the devotee can realize the Lord's presence, and thus he is directly connected, and he takes instruction from the Lord at every moment. Therefore, there is no chance of a devotee's being in error, nor is there any partiality on the part of the Lord for his pure devotees. The theme of Krishna's seeming partiality, although he's impartial, comes up again and again and again. And materially speaking, it sounds like a contradiction. He's partial but not partial, or not partial but partial. Sounds like a contradiction. And there are different ways of looking at that apparent partiality. Prabhupada's explanation is a standard one that he often gives. It's quite natural. Let's just say let's just say a father of several children, and is the given. That's one given. Another given is the father is by nature affectionate. So it's quite natural that affection goes to all the children. And amongst the so many children, one amongst the so many children displays consistently, regularly, naturally a spontaneous, special affection for the father. So with those three givens, that the father reciprocates with the special affection of the especial affectionate child is not partiality, although to an observer it may look like partiality. Now, what the child is feeling and what the father is feeling is something special, special affection, but it's not partiality. It's reciprocation. Another way of saying the same thing is yeyatam mam prapadyante tangstataiva pajamyaham, or another verse in Bhagavad Gita. Prapadyante means surrender. So as they, the living entities, as they have regard for Krishna, Krishna reciprocates with their regard. It's that reciprocation is not partiality. That reciprocation is Krishna's nature. He's reciprocal. For example, just keep going with the same idea. For example, supposing someone is inimical toward Krishna. They want to harm Krishna. They want to do battle with Krishna. They want to destroy Krishna. So, bad attitude towards Krishna. So Krishna's not inimical towards them. All right, that's what you'd like. So then he, Krishna, takes the role of one who's the adversary. He's not feeling adversarial, but if one has that regard for him, he reciprocates. Now, in the Uttama Adhikari position, that's not where we are, but those persons who are inimical toward Krishna, they're also serving Krishna. Constitutionally, everyone is the servant of Krishna. So that's giving Krishna an opportunity to experience this feeling, this rasa, that rasa. They're stimulating Krishna's rasamrita. And Krishna may say heavy things and do heavy things, but in the end, he frees them from their entanglement of material existence. He's not feeling dvesha, although he may say and do things that look like. In short, we can't measure transcendence with our yardsticks of material evaluation of things. Or we may try to do that, but we're not going to be able to understand. And therefore, by nomenclature, Krishna is at Hoksaja. Aksaja means to perceive with the senses, particularly with the sight, but one can see in different ways other than just these material eyes. These material eyes are not equipped to see spirit for many reasons. It's just one of the main reasons is there's a curtain of Maya that prevents the senses from perceiving what's beyond the curtain. This is in Queen Kunti's prayers. The curtain of Maya is preventing persons who have an inimical attitude toward Krishna to see him. So then, is it possible to see him? Yes. And when he draws the curtain back, then one can see him. And for sadhakas, any sense of transcendence, according to scripture, while we're still covered by the curtain of Maya, it's just a shadow or a reflection of, or an abhas feature of Krishna, bhakti abhas, nam abhas. We don't really directly perceive, so that to directly perceive requires something else. It requires eyes or senses that are qualified. And the qualification is the anjana of bhakti or prema, the anjana of the ointment of love. And then with the ointment of love, Krishna then says, all right, I'll pull back the curtain so you can see me. And so there's something on our side and there's something on Krishna's side. So when from Krishna's side, the situation here is Prithu, and we are accustomed to hearing about Krishna's direct pastimes. This is not Krishna, this is Vishnu, and the person is not a Brijbasi, or he's not part of Krishna's Leela outside of Vrindavan, is King Prithu. And King Prithu is, to make the picture complete, Prithu is a jiva, and he is an empowered jiva. He's a Shakti Avesh avatar, so he's an avatar of Vishnu who's seeing Vishnu. And he's offering prayers and worship of Vishnu at the lotus feet of Vishnu. But his love is so great that Vishnu doesn't leave, even when he could have or even should have left. Why? Because of his attraction to the love of Prithu. So what does that mean? Well, one of the ways of describing what that means is Krishna is controlled by love. He who is not controlled by anyone is controlled by his devotee. It's not exactly the devotees rubbing their hands together saying, aha, I'm going to control him with my love. That's not what love is. It's not the intent of controlling the master. Sometimes that idea is in the part of the servant, to control the master by this and that, and then I get what I want because I'm controlling my master by my service. So that's not Prithu, nor is it Vishnu. If that's somebody's mentality, he can easily disappear. Effortlessly, poof, appear, disappear. So he remained because of recognizing the special love of Prithu. The phrase is at the last part of the verse in Sanskrit, Surit Satam. Surit, in the word for word, is the well-wisher, and Satam is of the devotees. Surit Satam is the well-wisher of the devotees. So that's where this discussion comes in. Is he partial or impartial? What about the devotees? It says the devotees are supposed to see everyone equally. This is like so seeing everyone equally. Let's go back to the example of the father. So the father has some children, and then there's other children out there. It's like the Brijbasis. The parents of the cowherd boys. The parents of the cowherd boys naturally have loving affection for their children. And they have even more affection for Krishna than for their own child, which is, one might say, unnatural. But from a spiritual point of view, it's perfectly natural. Their good fortune is to have sons who are engaged in pastimes directly with Krishna. And their feelings by their sons being engaged directly in pastimes with Krishna, their feelings similarly for Krishna, seeing Krishna and having love for Krishna, desiring that they wanted Krishna as their son. So he reciprocated in a mysterious way that no one understood. Well, Shukadeva Goswami must have understood because he explained it. Then the curtain can be pulled back. Balaram even didn't understand until later, when the curtain was pulled back by Krishna, so that for a whole year, unknown even to Balaram, I mean, he can keep a secret, but unknown even to Balaram, so that means Balaram could experience like what the parents of the boys were experiencing, or the cows whose calves were also Krishna could experience. He was experiencing, Balaram was experiencing, similarly, the kind of affection for the cowherd boys like he has for Krishna. I mean, the emphasis goes often to the parents and their loving Krishna satisfaction being fulfilled through their sons, because Krishna became their sons. But also, Balaram had affection for the cowherd boys like he has for Krishna. So it's quite mysterious, which is to be expected. If it was not mysterious, it wouldn't be so wonderful. But in any case, it is mysterious. The mysteries of transcendence are not to be understood by our yardsticks, our material evaluation of things, only by bhakti. And by bhakti, there's a stretch. And beyond a stretch, it's not like you take the mind and go out and out and out and out and out. And then you can encompass it. As many of you know, just recently I spent some time going through Light of the Bhagavad, and in the last verse of Light of the Bhagavad, it gives a little bit of description of Vedic cosmology. No, 47, second to the last verse. There's no background. His audience is new, and yet he presents just a drop of Vedic cosmology. Vedic cosmology spans over 13 chapters of Canto 5, and it's really high. So, following that presentation, a little discussion with some devotees, how the Vedic model compares to the modern model of cosmology. The modern model of cosmology is heliocentric. Heliocentric means the sun is at the center. Prior to Copernicus, a nice fellow that developed, presented the heliocentric model, that all cultures of the world had a geocentric model. Geocentric means from the perspective of the point of observation, the movements of the bodies in the sky was described in that relationship. And the Vedic model is a heliocentric model. Now along comes the geocentric model, earth-centered model. And then along comes Copernicus, it becomes a sun-centered model. In the sun-centered model, there's two things. There's a rotation of planets around the sun, rotation of the planets around the sun, and there's the spinning of the earth on its axis. So there's two motions of the earth in relation to the sun. One of those is the rotation and the other is the spinning. Now if you take that model and pause it, you go to the Vedic model, there's another model. What's the other model? It's the Kala Chakra. What's the Kala Chakra? The wheel chakra of Kala, of time. And there's two perspectives of how the sun in relation to the earth moves, rather than how the earth in relation to the sun moves. It's the sun in relation to the earth, the geocentric. So one of them is this Kala Chakra that moves very quickly. That's the spinning motion. And every day, within 24 hours, the Kala Chakra moves. So day and night, or the spinning of the earth. And then there's the revolution of the sun, of the earth around the sun. So that's described in a different motion, that is the sun moving 1 degree every 300, for 360 days, moving in a counterclockwise direction in relation to the earth. And that makes the seasons. It's a different model. One is one we're accustomed to, at least currently we're accustomed to, is the sun-centered model. And the Vedic model is very clearly an earth-centered model from the point of observation of things. And the language is, who has seen time, would to speak of the wheel of time. But it's moving. You can see through the symptoms. Evidence of something, you may not be able to see that something, but that's like who's seen an electron, or who's seen, so many things, who's seen an atom. But there's a concept of atoms and concept of electrons, and the electronics is based upon symptoms. Electrons move and so forth and so on and so on. One can become an electrical engineer and understand something about something you cannot see. That's just a contemporary or worldly example. Similarly, there are things we cannot see. We cannot see time. Has anyone seen time? We see the effects of time, so we know that time exists. We know we can't see the mind, but we know the effects of the mind, and so forth. So the Vedas are describing things that we cannot see, like the wheel of time. And the Vedic conception is those are one of 5 main topics that Bhagavad Gita speaks about, and for that matter, the Vedas speak about, and it's mysterious. But time is moving things, undeniably. Time is moving things. Just like here we are. To get here took some time. We can't transport ourselves timelessly. It's an energy that's helping things move and change. So that's a concept, a Vedic concept of something you cannot see. So there's a concept. It's not just conceptual. It's you can say conceptual, but there's a wheel of time that's moving. And the sun is moving on that wheel of time once every 24 hours, and the other direction. So anyway, it's relative motion. So why am I going there? Those things that the Vedas are describing are verifiable through sound. Supposing one's consciousness is dull, sound isn't going to act. Supposing one's consciousness becomes a little refined, someone that's skilled in a particular field can understand very quickly something that another person that's not skilled in that field can't understand. Prabhupada's common example, is an auto mechanic. Supposing your car doesn't work. You open up the hood of the car and this and that, you don't know. Your mechanic comes, Prabhupada's words, he touches some wires, and zoom, the car starts. because he's an auto mechanic. He can see things that others cannot see because he has, he has penetrated into that understanding, and that's just mechanical. So what to speak of spiritual? So through sound, one can understand things that the senses cannot perceive. So the subtleness of a relationship with the personality of Godhead is something we cannot see. To us, it looks like partiality. And people ask questions about, why does God create a place where people suffer, and just so many things. Why do bad things happen to good people, and so many things. So many things. Things that we cannot do. There's the common expression, Western expression, the hand of the Lord. Or a biblical, the Lord moves in mysterious ways. But, the hand of the Lord is there, although we cannot see the hand of the Lord. Time is there, we cannot see time. The impartiality of the personality of Godhead is something that a realized person, a devotee, can understand. He's not being partial. Looks like partiality. Looks like partiality. He's staying because of Prithu's Surit Satam, the Lord's quality of Surit Satam, and the devotee, Prithu's quality towards the Lord. So he's reciprocating according to the disposition of Prithu. And Prithu understands it. I mean, in ordinary circumstances, having offered his respect and prayers and everything to Lord Vishnu, Vishnu would have departed, but he didn't. That's the message here. And take that same principle, and it's illuminating or elucidating one of the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is, how he reciprocates in a very special way according to one's regard for him. And those that are particularly devoted to him, he reciprocates in a particularly friendly way. And those that are inimical or otherwise, not so friendly, just like a loving father will certainly look after just many children, no problem. And then there's a relationship, and it's going to be different. And with Prithu, he's demonstrating the characteristics of an ideal king. That's the particular Shaktivesh avatar that Prithu Maharaj is. And the ideal king is perfectly submissive to the personality of Godhead, for starters. And so the personality of Godhead reciprocates in a very personal way with such a king. This is Prabhupada's explanation of how it was possible for one king to rule such vast territories, big kingdom, because because of their quality, the training and the qualification they had of being fully submissive to the personality of Godhead, meaning, in this realm, submissive to the brahmanas, qualified brahmanas, and submission to this personality of Godhead makes a very qualified king who can rule, and the citizens are very happy to be ruled by a qualified king. Good citizens. Therefore, a good king, this is now from our Light of the Bhagavad topic, but a good king invests tax money in building character in the citizens, because that's part of the whole system. And the citizens will support the quality king if the king is a quality person. And the quality person is submissive to the brahmanas, and the brahmanas are fully knowledgeable in the Vedas, and they're very they're Vaishnava brahmanas, dedicated to the personality of Godhead. That's the ideal system. So we're not in ideal times, but we need to look at the ideal system and as circumstance permits, live our lives accordingly. At least, our own little sphere in our heart and in our relationships, expand the circles out. But Krishna's at the center. And as much as that's there, then the kindness, Suritsatam feature, or Bhaktavatsala feature, that's another term that says essentially the same thing, Suritsatam and Bhaktavatsala. The Lord is very affectionate to his bhakta. And then in this world that's filled with anomalies and Kali Yuga distortions and disturbances, one is getting direction from Krishna, how to navigate. Supposing that connection, that submission to Krishna becomes challenged by some disturbing circumstance. Tendency is to go to the problem-solving mode, which means attention goes away from the source of everything, and here's the problem, and how do I apply my intelligence to sort out this problem? We forget Krishna, at least to a degree, at least for a while, and get into problem solving. And a lot of life is problem solving. Or the other side, making a plan for happiness without Krishna-centeredness. The Bhagavatam is taking us on a journey through sound to Krishna-centeredness. Slowly, 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 slowly. And then we get busy, we get into our problem-solving mode and planning mode and forget Krishna, and the material tendencies are quite strong. Conditioning is quite strong. But so the Bhagavatam gives us from different angles the perspective of God-centeredness and the fruit of that. That is, the personality of Godhead sees that regard that one has for him, and he reciprocates. Now, so far, we're not hearing what the Lord says and what the Lord does with Prithu. We're just getting the principle of why and what the Lord feels in relation to Prithu, and what Prithu understands by the Lord staying, what that means. In our case, we don't have Lord Vishnu coming and descending and offering his lotus feet for us to worship. We don't have that, to experience visually or personally in the same way. However, in principle, the fact is it's happening in our lives. There's transformation happening for, in different degrees for different persons, but in principle, the transformation that's happening is the presence of Krishna. And the presence of Krishna through the grace of disciplic succession. Just like having Srimad Bhagavatam and the commentary of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's Srila Prabhupada's gift. And Srila Prabhupada's gift is a gift from the previous acharyas and the instruction of his spiritual master to give this gift. And then you keep going back and back. Lord Chaitanya, Mahavadanyaya, Krishna Prema Pradayate. So it's happening by the grace of God. It's happening in our life. And to different degrees, we have that realization. And the factor of realization is our devotion, to the degree that we have genuine devotion, not just the cosmetic kind, but genuine, to the degree that there's genuine devotion. And then there's reciprocation. And, and we introspect, how much devotion do we really have? Pretty weak. But even with that pretty weak, there's reciprocation. There's the magic of reciprocation from Krishna, even we're weak. What to speak of if we stay with it and try to increase the sincerity and the devotional dimension of our efforts, etc. Srimad Bhagavatam is very special. Let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Go ahead, speak. Go ahead, speak.
Okay. When it comes to the partiality from Bhagavatam and the teachings, I can understand Krishna is equal to everyone. Uh, I kind of find that it's most of the time it remains at an intellectual
You
level.
find what?
It's at my intellectual level, at my mind level.
Your
Because
intelligence says yes, and your mind is out to lunch. Is that what you're saying?
um, I don't have realization of that, Maharaj. It's more of at my mind level, I understand Krishna is not
Within
partial.
the mind, you understand.
Yes,
That's what
Maharaj.
you're saying.
Yes, yes, Maharaj. So, for some of us, like who has experienced partiality in the material world, it is very difficult to uh, absorb or apply the teaching that Krishna is equal to everyone. There is, I kind of practically feel um, I do not know how to apply it when I see some partiality because my past has been like that. I've seen like my parents or people of authority having a certain mindset. It's difficult to come out of that mindset and see in a different way. It's a big struggle, Maharaj.
The struggle is a universal struggle for conditioned souls. So there's the philosophy, there's the teaching, the siddhanta, and then there's our covering, and they don't match because we're conditioned souls. So now what? Which is kind of what the question is. What do I do?
Yes.
Well, the introspection part you've done, which is what you just said. This is where I am, and with honesty, this is where I am, and I see I'm not moving so quickly from that position because it's deep. The Bhagavatam's answer is Tivra Bhakti. Tivra Bhakti can remove that deep impression. There's different ways of responding. Here's one way of responding. There's impressions, samskaras, and there's vasanas, which are accumulated over many, 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 many lifetimes and ingrained tendencies over many, 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 many lifetimes. So supposing, let's just for the sake of this discussion, it's not just of this lifetime, it's a many, 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 many lifetimes feeling that you're carrying vasana and it's ruling. So what to do? Because it's ruling. And whatever I do, whatever efforts I make, I find that wall, and I can't penetrate that wall because it's really thick wall. So here I am. Tivra Bhakti. Now, how do I get that Tivra Bhakti qualification? If that's the solution, how do I get this Tivra Bhakti qualification? With faith, not just passion, but with genuine devotion. So our primary means, is these two things, Shravanam Kirtanam. And make your efforts as far as you can through association, etc., making choices, etc., in that direction. The statement is, I get it, but. So continue with, I get it, with faith. This is called, in yoga language, this is called cultivation or practice. Every day, for an extended period of time, with faith. That's practice. Abhyasa. And in good association, persons that, at least, in the sphere of the orbit of my life, there are persons who I feel they're more free than I am, and I look up to that association, and I value messages and the example, etc., etc. You strengthen those sadhu sangha connections. Take inspiration to go further in the Tivra Bhakti direction. And don't slacken. Don't become complacent because it's easy. That's Tivra Bhakti. And then you can break through. It just breaks. Not just diminished, but it breaks those tendencies. That's nice sounding. And for one who's captured, who isn't captured by long-standing impressions that come from many, many, many lifetimes. We all are. It's the force that's operating it. So it's not unique to you. You have a particular set. Somebody else has another. Somebody else has another. And they're all binding. One may be more pleasant looking. The other may be more unpleasant looking. But that's all about bondage. We're all in the same boat. And the remedy is the same for all of us. The cultivation of Tivra Bhakti. Don't be complacent. Not saying that you are, but I'm just saying that's the caution. Supposing it starts to get less oppressive, the tendency is then to become complacent. So let the purpose become something more than, I feel better. I feel less oppressed. That's the unsteady territory. That sine curve up and down and up and down. So the invitation is Tivra Bhakti, break through I just want to feel more comfortable and less oppressed by the vasanas that are pushing on me, controlling me, checking me, blocking me, ruling my life. And it can go on for lifetimes more. Or, so then it's free will choices and making the choices that align one with Tivra Bhakti. That's one way of describing what to do. Next, anyone else?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So when someone is, when they're going through the difficulties, so how to help them to understand that it's the, like the same principle that we talked about in this verse. Lord.
Yeah, how to? is your question. How to help
and
others.
how to help them in
How to
the
help others.
positive mode that they don't go through.
Well, you're not the controller of others' lives. And I gave a presentation last week, or week before last, on the dreaded drama triangle. It has an acronym, DDT. DDT is a poison. You familiar? No? In agriculture, to help agriculturists, there was an insecticide to keep insects from, damaging the crops. So it was given the acronym DDT. I don't know what it stood for, but it meant poison. And then they banned it because it turned out that it made the crops poisonous, and people would eat the crops and they would eat poison. So it was banned. So there's this little video, the dreaded drama triangle, and one of them is what you just said. One of the dreaded. So there's the hero, this is the triangle. The hero, the villain, and the victim. So the hero trying to help the victim is a mistake. What rather this little video displays, being the facilitator to help them. So there's a helping, but it's not fix the problem. So see your position as an instrument of Krishna. That's not the language they use in this little video. But you're the facilitator. So the facilitator doesn't own the problem. The facilitator doesn't become entangled in the problem or the solution of the problem. The facilitator helps them discover the solution, but it's being the representative of transcendence. A coach, a facilitator. So the more that you can absorb yourself in Krishna consciousness, the more you can be a facilitator of Krishna consciousness. Let's take a look at Prabhupada, or so many nice examples. He cared like anything, but he didn't fix people's problems. So what did he do? What did Vyasadeva do when he saw Kali Yuga's coming? What did the sages of Naimisharanya do when they saw Kali Yuga's coming? And they saw, so you look at the role models and become a role model according to your nature. You can help others to the degree that you're Krishna conscious. And when you help others in a strong Krishna conscious way, you don't own their problem. Doesn't mean you don't care. It means you don't own the problem. And that's not saying that you're saying, how do I own the problem? Or so you become Krishna conscious and help by your connection to Krishna through sound vibration and by empowerment, by an instrument of Krishna, being empowered as an instrument of Krishna. To the degree that Krishna empowers you to be his instrument, you can effectively help another person. But it's not in the role of the hero that's going to rescue their problem, rescue them from their problem. It goes the other way. Your connection with Krishna, strengthen that. And Krishna will guide you and strengthen you, give you power, potency to do the right thing, say the right thing, and always just model a life of Krishna consciousness. And that's what you can do. And then people that are undergoing some difficulty, they're going to make some decisions. In many cases, when people are going through difficulty, they're looking in the material way of, well, I need a solution. And they're not looking to Krishna. They're looking for a material solution to their material problem. The material problem is a result of forgetting Krishna. We're in the material world because of that. And comes the host of other problems along with the big one. Smartavya satatam vishnor vismartavyo najata chit. You know the verse? Etayor eva kinkara. All vidhis and nishetas are, the do's and the don'ts are servants, kinkaras of that one. So your best is to help them remember Krishna. Now, how to best help them remember Krishna when they've forgotten Krishna and they're struggling with some hardship, when they just want the solution to their problem or mitigation of the feeling, the emotion of the struggle. So if you're an instrument, you understand why is the struggle there. So you have a holistic picture. Let's say your child bangs their knee. You don't just give them a Bhagavad Gita class. You take care of, but the bigger picture also needs to be there in parenting and in friendship. Anyone else? Up front?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. This is regarding the question you were explaining about even though our senses are not perfect because of the mercy of Bhagavatam and Prabhupada, the transcendental knowledge through the sound coming into your ears, and it is helping you to understand that transcendence to the amount of submission which we are giving us. But yesterday and today's Muchukunda story and
Yesterday and today what?
Yesterday and today Pradhu Maharaj's submission, the amount of submission they have it as pure devotees. They have their realizations. But for us, even though when we hear Bhagavatam every day, it feels so good, and it feels it feels better. But the moment we step out, it becomes more challenging to, even though those teachings are nice to hear, but we can't practice because of conditional nature or our shortcomings. We can't implement them the way we think of it. So how can we improve that? As you were saying, antennas.
Abhyas. In Bhakti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami points to this verse the verse is a verse from Patanjali Yoga Sutras, where Patanjali, he refers to Patanjali, describing what practice is. And he explains why it has to be over a period of time is because of vasanas. Tendencies may be diminished to a degree for some time, but because the vasana is there, it appears again and again. It's very thick. Therefore, it's over a period of time. And the answer to your question is follow what abhyasa requires. You try to increase faith, you can try to increase the quality and the quantity of your practice. Okay. Anything else? Anything online? Yes? Two. Okay.
This question's from Divyambara Devidasi. How does a struggling neophyte in this Kali Yuga lead an ideal life or be a role model?
Well, that question was asked in two different ways. So I've answered that question.
This one is from Shilpa Mataji. At the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, we seek the blessings of Goddess Saraswati.
We seek the blessings of Goddess Saraswati. Okay.
The question is she married?
The Goddess Saraswati that's being spoken of in the beginning of the Bhagavatam is not the Saraswati who is the consort of Lord Brahma. Rather, the Saraswati that's being referred to in the Bhagavatam, in that first section, is the prototype or the Shakti of the personality of Godhead. So not exactly married, but the consort of the personality of Godhead. So one of her names or one of her features in transcendence is Saraswati. That's who is being prayed to. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki